Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer, part number LB5080-400-643. This is a lube bearing 5-knuckle full mortise 5/8 radius corner steel based 4x4 removable pin satin bronze blackened hinge is what it is. Now, let's dissect the part number. So LB, that stands for lube bearing. It's all but impossible to notice on the camera, but LB means lube bearing, and that stands for the fact that this hinge has an inserted wafer here and here. Between those two knuckles is an incredibly thin, high-tech nylon wafer. Nylon doesn't make you think it's real strong, but here are the facts regarding Bommer's LB series. You can buy hinges as plain bearing, you can buy them as ball bearing, you can buy them from Bommer as lube bearing. Ball bearing is the least desirous of all. Ball bearing is good, and that's common. You'll see those bearing packets here and here, and that's going to allow a door to operate for orders of magnitude more predictably, more reliably. Now the LB is proven to give a 30% greater sort of performance beyond ball bearing. The advantage of it is, if you didn't know it, you'd think it's just a plain bearing hinge. So it maintains a simple sort of aesthetic that you would have rather than having large bearing packets stuffed in here. But it's really the performance that's most crucial. I've seen countless plain bearing hinges installed on applications where they ought to be ball bearing, and it's just a fail. Eventually, it won't be year 1 or year 2, but 10 years, 20 years down the road, it will become obvious the disadvantage of a plain bearing when the door is now sagging into the opening, hitting the jamb, the latch may no longer operate correctly. If you have a high volume door, or if you have an application where you simply want the best and you want it to last, lube bearing is the way to go. Here's a scenario. Residential application, the door down to the basement, if it's a finished basement, that door gets used constantly. That's a good place to use a lube bearing. Okay. Now the fact that it is 5/8 radius hinge is certainly a tip-off that it's going to be residential in nature. Let's continue on. We've talked about LB. Now the 5080, that means that it is a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves there that when the leaves are mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame, when they're brought parallel, that's what it's going to look like. The swag on the hinge leaf is a reference to how the leaf is physically bent underneath the barrel. Full mortise. It means that it is a 5-knuckle hinge. It means that it's steel-based. All of this is buried within the 5080 part number. It also means that it's a 5/8 radius. 5/8 radius comes from how the wood door is machined. Therefore is 1.25 inches in diameter, so that when the door manufacturer routes the door and frame with that 1.25 inch diameter, it will leave a 5/8 radius, and they've not gone back to square the corner out. Not that it necessarily matters, but you might have let's say a metal clad door where you can't easily go and square the corners out, or you don't know the difference and this visually matches what you have, or the fact of the matter is you just want what's there and you don't want to worry about it. That's okay. Bommer will make it for you. That's the 8 in the part number specifically. Now the next is the height, the 400. That means that the hinge is 4 inch tall and then 4 inch wide. Okay, the height is the first dimension on hinges like these. Not that it really matters when you have a 4x4 hinge, but what if you had a 4.5x4? It's just important to know height is the first dimension. 643 is a reference to the finish. That is going to be the satin bronze blackened sort of finish. 643 is a fairly unusual finish. It's also known as US 11, which is plated satin bronze, blackened satin relieved and clear coated. It's almost like US 9 finish, antique brass. Except that it's not nearly as streaky, with contrast between dark oil rubbed sort of finish and then light gold tones like you'd see in brass. This is an elegant finish, relatively consistent, and in my opinion, far more desirable than an antique brass. Now, I said US 11, and it's called 643. That really means that this is that's an additional way, and if I didn't mention it earlier, buried in the 5080 part number is the fact that it's a steel base material. This 643 also tells us that it's a steel based sort of hinge. This is certainly going to be available in a bronze base material, and that would be a 616 finish. 616 and 643 both mean satin bronze blackened. The 616 tells you that the base material is not steel, but it would be called architectural bronze. The 643 tells you that it's a steel-based hinge. That's important to know when you're dealing with understanding what hinge it is that you're purchasing. Okay. Now, screws are included in a complimentary finish. There is a link below this video to a document called Cut Sheet, where you can review all of the important dimensional properties about the hinge. I urge you to double check everything. These are expensive, custom-made, non-returnable sorts of architectural pieces of hardware, so be sure that it's going to match, or that you understand all the dimensional properties. And really what I mean is the location of the screw holes. If you're matching the existing, print out the cut sheet, take it to your door and measure and compare just to be safe. Okay. There is an extended description below this video. Sold as each 5/8 radius corner, lubricated bearing, 5-knuckle, full mortise, 5/8 radius, standard weight. That means that the leaf thickness is 130 thousandths, and that's called out on the cut sheet as well, and that it's 4x4. Obviously available in all of the common finishes in both steel, stainless steel, architectural bronze base materials, and the name Bommer is synonymous with this material. The last thing I'd like to point out to you is the Bommer logo, and right above it says Made in USA, the fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I, to represent them. If you have any questions on the Bommer LB5080-400-643 hinge, you can link to the full line catalog from below this video to the manufacturer's page and pull up all the Bommer products that we sell, the link to the manufacturer's website, along with a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much.